This is Agnes, the presenter of Sickle Cell Talks with Agnes. Welcome to my YouTube channel. So stay tuned because every week we'll be posting videos about any topic in sickle cell disease. We don't have set days yet, but just turn on the post notifications for you to be notified every time we post a video. Thank you and stay tuned. If you've got any questions, get in touch with me on social media or social media platforms. Thank you. At this point, we are going to go to Marjorie, who's a caregiver, to just give a quick testimony as well. Thank you, Marjorie.
Thank you. Thanks, Agnes. Thank you to all. And hello. There have been very good presentations, really, that have been made, very informative. And I must say, I really can relate to literally all the presentations from the clinical side to the psychosocial side, and just, even at the household level. And I, as a caregiver of a child, a daughter who's 14 years old, can relate to a lot of issues that are current in the sickle cell world. And particularly when you look at issues of just what is going on from the psychosocial point of view. I actually happen to be a PhD researcher in sociology and chronic illness, and specifically sickle cell. And I was driven to come to this stage of my studies because of, obviously, being a caregiver of a young child who has had a lot of issues in her life of sickle cell. She was initially diagnosed with sickle cell at the age of 7 months and had to have her spleen removed by 11 months. She's our first child, and so obviously, as parents, your first child, there's a lot of issues going on there, the anxieties, and Viva did allude to this earlier on, the anxieties you feel about having a child with this condition for which you've come to know has, at that time anyway, 14 years ago, really was not presented with the sort of unknown cure, as it were. And bone marrow, of course, was being spoken about, but it was obviously something that was still quite not easy to reach. And yeah, so there was a lot of anxieties, a lot of challenges ahead of us. And as we got to know the condition, we began to know that this is a condition that requires a lot of care and management, both at household level as well as from the clinic side. And so in our journey of dealing with sickle cell, we've come to understand that just getting to have our child cared for as far as managing sickle cell in terms of attending to the necessary doctor's appointments, and attending to the necessary care from home was paramount. And one of the things that I must say as a caregiver that has definitely shown a gap is the psychosocial aspect of sickle cell. Because as a caregiver, you actually get to realize that sickle cell, as much as it definitely does affect the sufferer physically, emotionally, and all that comes with it, it has serious impact on the family as a whole. And it's from that point, it's from that aspect that I began to research. I began to interrogate systems that are current, both the clinical side as well as the social side, and came to realize that there are some gaps. And I'm still searching, because of course I'm still researching from the PhD point of view. But they are real. They are real for a caregiver, and you are not really in this journey just sort of given the physical care for the child as far as taking them to the doctor's appointments and so on. But you are in this journey, particularly if they're young, to care for them in terms of the emotional side of things as well. And so really what I've come to learn and appreciating a lot of research, scientific research that has gone before us, I've come to learn that if we don't advocate for the psychosocial structures and systems that should be put in place, a lot of our warriors, so to speak, really sort of have a challenge in terms of dealing with this condition early on in years. And I'll say this very quickly as I get into some of the questions that were posed. They have a challenge earlier on in years because this is a condition for which starts in childhood. Really, they're babies at the time for most of them when they actually get to to start, get to suffer from this condition. And from that time on, you get to realize that for most of their livelihood, really for most of their life, they will have to go through this condition. And so it's from that point of view that I am advocating for very robust and strong psychosocial structures and systems that will help not only the warrior or the person who's suffering from sickle cell, but the people that surround that person, which in this case will be the household. At household level will be the mother, the father, or siblings, and whoever else is within that community. And so I'll go quite quickly into, because I do realize that we're running out of time, I'll sort of go very quickly through some of the questions that had been asked. One of them is, how can I help my son with sickle cell disease live a healthy life? My experience really here, and I'm not speaking from a clinical point of view, just general, my experience here is just make sure that the child has a healthy meal, and healthy meals don't have to be expensive. They are eaten properly, and of course they do remain well hydrated, in most days, regardless of the weather. If it's very cold, of course, give them some warm drinks. If it's warm, give them drinks that are sort of room temperature, and the other foods that will sort of help them really have a healthy diet in that sense. The other question that was asked was, I need to know more on how to keep my daughters safe during this pandemic. We're in the UK, and for those that are in the UK, I think one of the things that have been pronounced is about shielding those that are vulnerable. So my daughter has been shielded during this whole time. But as we're sort of monitoring the situation as far as the pandemic is concerned, we've been able to slowly take her out for short walks around and still bring her back in. And we're all sort of just trying to practice, trying to make the environment safe for her as far as shielding is concerned. So I think that's one of the things that you certainly would have to do in this case during the pandemic. The other question was, my boy is SS, going to be 12 years by October. Not brilliant as expected, sorry. It takes time to before he assimilates. This is making the father unhappy towards him. What can be done? I think sort of common issues, again, I'm not speaking from a clinical point of view, I'm speaking from just a general point of view. I think one of the struggles that you will know as as a caregiver, as a mother or a father, is that sickle cell patients do have the times when they're faced with chronic pains or other discomforts that can get them to slow down in doing their schoolwork, as it were, and that in itself tends to pose challenges for caregivers if you're not patient with the process. So again, here my advice would be just be patient with the process. The child will come around, but give them as much support as is required. One asks, is sleeplessness more common among people with sickle cell? I can say yes, I've experienced it with my daughter. Again, from the clinical point of view, I cannot speak into why. I'm sure there's some scientific reasons to this, but yes, it is common. Again, engage the child, try to again, sort of engage the child in terms of coming up with some structure, a sleeping structure that can help both you and the child, because I know, again, these are one of the areas as caregiver that affects not only the child but will affect you as well in terms of sleeplessness. And the last one, maybe if I can, is what can I do to reduce an infection in my warriors? Again, engage with the doctors and just make sure that they are on the appropriate medications, whether it's antibiotics, that at an early stage, that will help reduce any infections. And this, I think, comes back to the issue of trying to make sure that you are attending to just the very basics about keeping the child free from infectious areas and, even things that will sort of bring about infections in the child. So I think, having said that, I'm so sorry I didn't manage to attend to all the questions, but having said that, again, from the give a point of view. There is a lot of work, there are lots of gaps, but there is so much progress that has been made. It's very promising. The horizon is looking very promising and encouraging, both for the sufferer as well as the caregiver. And I feel that as long as we keep advocating, we sound and make the story of sickle cell louder, I think we are making progress, and there is a lot of things for us to do that we'll see that will break through with this condition. So thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to just share my story and just get the opportunity to answer some of these questions. Thank you.